Now, it's not often that you get many books that focus around football. So, of course, we had Fever Pitch, which was amazing. And we had things like The Football Factory. But this is a book which tells of a fractious midlife reunion between two old school friends. One's a retired footballer, the other's a disgraced architect. So what happens when the two get together and one is commissioned to build a full-size football stadium on his Hertfordshire estate? Let's talk to author Robert Cohen, who joins me in the studio. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Where did this come from then, this idea for a plot?
Good question, because it's about 15 years since I started writing it, and I think it was just an idle thought about what an old friend of mine was doing, and you sort of sometimes imagine bumping into someone you haven't seen for years, and it was just that tiny little thought, and it grew into the idea of two old friends who hadn't seen each other for years, and it was originally going to be a writer and a footballer, and then I thought, that's too boring and too easy. So I thought, how about an architect? So basically I set myself the task of researching about two things that I didn't really know very much about.
Well, that's a challenge, isn't it? It's easier to write a book on something you know something about, but you decided you make life more difficult for yourself.
Well, I always do with these things.
And it's a real labour of love then, since this has taken so many years to actually get to the point where it's being published.
Well, I don't mean to suggest that I've been writing it for 15 years, though. Actually,
it's been unfolding in your head, though, by the sounds of things.
I sort of finished it years ago and had more or less given up of any idea of anyone actually publishing it unless I did it myself online or whatever. And then someone I know, Judy Upton, the local playwright, mentioned that she was having a book published by a new publishing company, and I dropped them a line thinking nothing would come of it about this book of mine, and they asked to read it, and then they said they loved it and they wanted to.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So because so many people really struggle to get published, it's a hard and tough and ruthless world, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not holding my breath about necessarily getting any more published. Who knows? But this is quite yeah.
What happens then? Do they just publish it as it was, or have you had to get involved in lots of rewrites and editing when they made that decision?
Well, a couple of months back, I having done some tweaks, I sent them the final version, and a little while later they came back and said, "Okay, here's our edit. If you want to have a look, tell us what you think." And it was a few very minor suggestions, most of which were absolutely on the money, just saying you need to make this particular thing more clear. But as I was going through it, no problem at all with what they'd done, but I was finding all this stuff that, I think I could do that better, actually. And I ended up doing a whole lot more tweaking and actually put in a couple of extra, not complete chapters, but a couple of sections of chapters that hadn't been there
There's
before.
a lot of work involved in writing a book, isn't there?
There is. A lot more, I'd say, than writing which is what I'm more used to doing.
Well, this is it. You're used to the world of entertainment anyway. You're used to entertaining an audience. I suppose writing a book is doing that in just a slightly different way.
Yeah, well, with a play, you can take a story and you can say, well, there's only a certain amount I can show on the stage, so you have problems that you have to deal with, and in order to show in some way, but it also helps in some way, knowing that there's certain things you can't do. Whereas with a novel, you've got to do everything. There's no excuse for not, describing things which can be just sort of like alluded to in half a line in a play. Not that I'm one for doing pages and pages of detailed description or anything, but...
This is, we mentioned the football connection, and it's quite unusual to have a book sort of focusing around football, but actually they work terribly well. I mean, a Fever Pitch is a brilliant device as you didn't need to be interested in football in order to love that book. Is yours the same?
I like to think so. I don't know that. I know a lot more about football than I did when I started, although I also started getting into football, making myself get into it, also to be able to have something to talk to my dad about. Not that I didn't have stuff to talk about, but both my brothers had various sporting interests they could talk about with him, and I sort of envied that a bit. And I thought, well, the only sport I like at all is football. I usually just watch these sort of international competitions and stuff. And I started making myself get more into that. And I have to say, there was a time when I could not understand how anyone could concentrate on a full game for 90 minutes. And in time, I found that you could, and I can. So, yeah.
So you've kind of made yourself like football.
Yeah. I'm still not a sort of football nerd or anything, but I'm a lot more interested than I used to be. In fact, myself and a friend are going to go and see Norway and Austria women's in the Women's Euros, which is coming to Brighton.
Oh, fantastic. Do you know that's probably going to be well worth seeing as well? I mean, that's going to be great. And I do think that there's, women's football still doesn't get the recognition that it deserves.
Well, apparently so far there's a lot of seats available.
Right.
But hopefully that'll change nearer the time.
I think it's going to be a great moment there. So these are a sort of unlikely pair. They reunited midlife. Often the way is that you become very different people as you get older. Just tell us a little bit about the plot.
Well, basically, they were at school together as kids, and they were best friends until Reggie, who's the footballer, started becoming noticed for his skills. And as soon as people started, being interested in him and him becoming successful, of course, then he started hanging out with cooler people and dropped Alex, who was his former best friend. And so that's the source of some bitterness which runs through the book. But years later, after Reggie has retired and also recently been widowed, and Alex is a successful architect, but he's owing to office politics, he's sort of in disgrace, and one way or another, they sort of need each other, and Reggie conceives this strange idea to have a full-size stadium built on his estate, and he wants his best and oldest friend, to build it for him. So it's progress over about a year of Alex being drawn into this strange kind of semi-reclusive celebrity world of Reggie on his estate, which in some ways is quite alluring for various reasons, but also he feels that he's being dragged away from what he feels is really important, which is his family. But,
a lot of themes there that we can all relate to by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Well, I won't ask what happens to you. It happens in the end because we need to buy the book and read the book. So it's out in the summer. Just remind us of the name of the book.
It's called Architecture for Beginners.
Oh, looking forward to hearing more about it when it's out. Really good to see you. Thanks for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you.